the grandson of former President John F. Kennedy, is ripping Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s 2024 White House bid and throwing his support behind President Biden. President John F. Kennedy is my grandfather, and his legacy is important, Jack Schlossberg, 30-year-old son of U.S. Ambassador to Australia, Caroline Kennedy, said in a video posted Friday on Instagram. It's about a lot more than Camelot and conspiracy theories. It's about public service and courage, Schlossberg continued, endorsing Biden's re-election campaign. He said the 46th president shares my grandfather's vision for America, that we do things not because they are easy, but because they are hard. He is in the middle of becoming the greatest progressive president we've ever had, he said, citing unemployment and job figures, infrastructure and green energy investments, and the appointment of federal judges. He ended the COVID pandemic and he ended Donald Trump, Schlossberg added before blasting his cousin Kennedy's campaign for the Democratic nomination. These are the issues that matter. And if my cousin Bobby Kennedy Jr. cared about any of them, he would support Joe Biden too, Schlossberg said of his family member, an environmental lawyer and vaccine skeptic. Instead, he's trading in on Camelot celebrity conspiracy theories and conflict for personal gain and fame. I've listened to him. I know him. I have no idea why anyone thinks he should be president, said Schlossberg, who spoke alongside his mother at the virtual 2020 Democratic National Convention. What I do know is his candidacy is an embarrassment. Let's not be distracted again by somebody's vanity project, Schlossberg said. The Harvard Law School and Harvard Business School graduate is the latest member of the Kennedy clan to denounce the presidential run by the son of former Attorney General Robert Kennedy. Earlier this week, Kennedy's sister, Carrie Kennedy, publicly condemned her brother's remarks on COVID-19 and ethnic targeting, calling them deplorable and untruthful. Former Representative Joe Kennedy III also spoke out about his 69-year-old uncle's widely criticized comments after a New York Post obtained audio recording of the White House hopeful, saying COVID-19 could have been ethnically targeted to prevent the deaths of Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese people. My uncle's comments were hurtful and wrong, the former congressman said. Now, there's two things to keep in mind when I cover RFK Jr. I have a difficult time being able to really get into the vaccine stuff. One, because I don't think I'm as knowledgeable of the topic as some other people, but also because YouTube does like to punish those that speak about it in a certain way. But what I have said before is that he is someone who's running for a variety of reasons. And when it comes to other issues like single payer, like free college, these are things that I think he does address in ways that Biden does not, and give enough credence to at least allowing him to run and get some type of coverage and have for a more spirited primary versus let's just hand a nomination to Biden and pretend that RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson don't exist. So that's one of the reasons why I said even if he's not my first choice, he is still someone that I will defend in most instances, depending on what it is. But let's really get into Jack, because I've wanted to discuss this guy for a little bit of a while. Back in 2016, I did a video on this guy, Schlossberg, and I talked about how he waited until after the Democratic primary was over to endorse Hillary, and how I was so disgusted by this because this is the youngest, I'd say, politically active member of one of the most famous political dynasties in America, and he completely ignores the progressive movement that Sanders started and was very much something that was a main topic of that discussion, just so he can grovel at the feet of the likely winner. And it really struck me as almost opportunistic, like to a degree that's kind of nauseating. So when I see comments by him about the embarrassing bit of his cousin, I'm not really surprised, because this basically, the Kennedy family, for the most part, there are some exceptions, but for the most part, the ones that are politically active in the current era don't really stand for anything, and they just want to have access to the old guard Democratic Party. They're kind of like their flunkies. So you'll have someone like Schlossberg, who really has done nothing to help anyone or call out any type of specific issues, suddenly come out the woodworks and go, "Oh, my cousin that's running for president, his bid is an embarrassment, and Biden has done such an amazing job." But it's that same old thing of we have to save face for the incumbent because we don't want to lose access, and we have to pretend like the person running against them is just crazy. I don't know why anyone thinks he should be president. And I just also want to say this. The Kennedy family, and I know people will get mad at me, but I don't care. The Kennedy family has three important historical figures in it. President Kennedy and his two brothers, Robert and Ted. And RFK was very influential in terms of ending much of the mob corruption in the United States. And you could argue that Ted Kennedy was the greatest senator of all time. But the 2 to 3 generations that have spawned since those three men, you could take all of them and put them in a box and throw it outside, and you would miss nothing. Now, some of them are not as egregious as others. But the thing about RFK Jr. is this is a guy who, whether you like him or not, has been a political commentator. He's been involved with environmental issues for a long time. He's not someone that sat on the board with his dad's name, like Kerry, or got married to the governor of New York, or mainly just coast off of who his dad or his grandpa was, like Jack. Because really, what does anyone know Schlossberg for doing? He waits to endorse whoever he thinks, or is told probably by someone much smarter, who will be the Democratic candidate for president, and then he just kind of takes photos with them. And of course, when he makes his condemning remarks, he has to quote his grandpa, because he has to remind us every 5 seconds that he's JFK's sole grandson. We have to be made familiar with that every time this man reappears. But yeah, he's someone who has political ambitions but doesn't stand for anything, which is why, again, he waited until after the 2016 primary was over to endorse Clinton. And I feel really bad for America, because for the next 20, 30, possibly even 40 years, we're going to have to watch this guy basically try to nostalgia bait the whole country into thinking that he should be voted for any office simply because of who he's related to. And, you know, it's just kind of sad to watch. Because, like, whether you agree with RFK Jr. on a lot of the environmental stuff, it's sad to watch a family that has a bunch of members who aren't worth a piss try to come out and, like, take a swing at him. And they're not doing it because they're such a valiant believers in President Biden. They don't want to lose access. They don't want to have Pelosi and all the rest of the Democratic old guard figures slam the door in their face and say, okay, this decrepit family is finished. So they have to come out and save face and do all of this armchair quarterback stuff for this old man. And it's sad. Because like I said, RFK Jr. is someone who has issues that he's running on that makes sense, to me anyway. Again, we can discuss the vaccine stuff at length. It's something that it deserves a much more worthwhile debate than a lot of the smears that get thrown his way. And it's really interesting watching arguably the one member of the Kennedy family who went out and did stuff that was unique and of himself, of that generation after the three brothers, get, like, attacked, and especially by the one who literally is only notable because of who his grandpa is, and that stands for nothing and just switches from one side to the other. So it's like you have the almost 70-year-old man that even if you don't agree with him, has some authenticity in terms of the environment and, like, you know, being against vaccines for a long time, versus his much younger cousin who, even at 30 years old, has no personality, no identity, is really just a placeholder for them to try and trick people into voting for them again. It's sad.